Level up with a new AAA Commanders MVP membership. Get all the benefits of AAA, plus exclusive experiences, discounts, and tickets. Already a AAA member, upgrade for free or join today at AAA.com/Commanders. That was a disaster. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. Folks, it ain't pretty, and it's not going to be pretty on there either. So right now I have an update on Jaden Daniels on ESPN.com, but you can always do it there. And don't forget, Tuesday night, 7:30 live stream with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders, and myself. Folks, we are back to the Therapy Tuesday sessions. This is getting ridiculous. And you can explain some things away, and I'll get to all this in a minute, but I do want to start with injuries because that's kind of important here, as it has been every week for this team. And some years it just goes like that. And this is the year that's happened. When they started getting those injuries in week 2, some bad ones, you just know like there's going to be more, and there continues to be more. You know, they played without Debo, Samuel, Terry McLaurin, obviously no Brown out. You know, you can push him to the side now because he'll be out there for at least 4 weeks. And then today it was Dorrance Armstrong back. He goes out with a hamstring injury. Don't know his status, but the big one, of course, is Jaden Daniels. Leaves with the hamstring injury at the start of early in the third quarter on the play where he fumbled the ball, left the game, does not come back. I will say there's a couple things here. And I think there's actually, well, first of all, he's going to get an MRI on Monday. So that's what we know. How the severity of it, I don't know. What I do know is he was walking around just fine in the locker room after the game. We saw him in the locker room. In fact, we were going to talk to him. He was scheduled. He was typically the quarterback always goes to the podium after the game. He was going to go to the podium, and then at some point later, they said, no, we'll just maybe do a Zoom tomorrow, but he is getting MRI. So I think my sense would be like once they knew he was going to get an MRI, like don't make him go up there until you know more about the situation. And, you don't want to go up there and say, hey, I'm doing great, I'm going to be okay, and then have the MRI show something different and then not be okay and not play. And when everybody's like, hey, wait a minute, the day before you said this. So I think, but I don't know for sure, like what it means for him. All I know is he's getting the MRI. And even like Jalen Lane said, like they said, he looks like it's okay. But again, still more to learn. And Dan Quinn will say, we'll talk to him tomorrow, hopefully get some sort of an update on this because it's kind of a big deal. We can't just keep hearing updates you a couple of days from now when if you know something, please tell us, because I think it's getting to the point where you got to be a little bit more forthcoming when you can with these injuries, especially in this situation. And if it's, if it's questionable, if it's iffy, that wouldn't be a surprise for the Chiefs game. Like, and if he, so we'll see what happens with that. But anyways, he's going to, again, he did look okay walking around, but we still need to know more. All right. And then, man, I don't even know where to begin with this one, folks. I will say this. I don't remember that, this is what there's 3-4 now after the 44-22 loss, whatever, 3-4. And that's 17 games last year, 20 with the playoffs. So 27 games now with Dan Quinn. That's easily the most upset he's been. Easily. Just the look on his face. I think there was a very pissed off look, which there should be, given what we all saw, the number of penalties, the sloppy play, the drop passes. They were up against it because of injuries. And even Dan Quinn, the first thing he said after the game was, injuries aren't the reason they lost, which I would agree. Like injuries can be a reason why you may not have the rhythm you have. You may not have this. You may not have the same playmakers. Like, yes, it's a next man up mentality, but folks, look at the field. Like, would you rather have a healthy Terry McLaurin, or Chris Moore, Debo or McCaffrey or Jalen Lane out there? Like those guys can help you, but they're not the same threat. And teams play them differently because of it. And again, I'll get to that in a minute. But the point is, but having said that, you can still play better. And that's the thing. Like injuries do not explain all. And that's what Quinn's point was. And I think like even Jeremy Reeves talked about this after the game in the locker room, and others as well. Like other teams have these injuries too. Like they all have injuries. And you have to somehow find a way. Now At some point, it takes a big toll, but that doesn't explain drops. It doesn't explain missing some open targets, right? Making guys up. Some of that can be like, okay, you haven't had time with this guy, with this receiver, so you don't have that rhythm down on certain routes. How are they going to run it? Get that. But there's still too many unexplained things. There's, the offensive line has largely been intact. You had Sam Cosmi back. So like there's no excuse for anything that goes on up there because they've played together. Like they don't play with the receivers, they're playing with one another. So, and defensively, the issues, like, yes, they've had injuries and it's to some key parts, but and I think some parts in the secondary, right? But we're really in the secondary, it's Harris. That's the only one that really that is out, and they keep giving up those big plays. So it's not about the injuries, it's about guys not doing their jobs or situations they're being put in. And, so again, typically when this kind of stuff happens, I always blame it on organizational failure. So are you bringing in enough of the right guys or the good enough players? Are you putting them in the right spots? Are you making the plays? Like, the first series, Marshawn Lattimore misses a tackle. It's not about scheme. That should have been a third down and like 3, or excuse me, third down or 7. Should have been a 2-yard gain, and he gets run over, and it's like now it's a 9-yard gain. Now give him credit, he bounces up and goes and helps make the tackle, but he's up high and he gets run over, and it should have been a 2-yard gain. So instead of a third and long, now you have short, and that's how drives get extended, and that keeps happening. That's not scheme, that's player messing up, and we saw that time and time again. Sometimes with the same guy. I know, listen, man, this is not what anybody wanted this season, right? Like, I get your frustration. You don't even like, I know you're going to yell, and you should be frustrated. Like, not just frustrated with, okay, the winning and the losing, but the way things are unfolding. And you can be frustrated with the amount of injuries. Like, that's something nobody can control. And it does, like, regardless of what you say, there is an impact. There just is. Now, again, it doesn't mean you have to play poorly. You can still play much better than what they've played. Why aren't they? That's the thing that they have to answer. I don't know that I have the answer to that, because if I did, I'd be sitting in a different office in that building. But, for your sake, I don't blame you at all for how you would feel in this. I would feel very frustrated because, not just, again, whether or not you can say, like, maybe logically you step away from the season after it's all over and say, like, man, the injuries were just a killer. You can logically think about it at that time. During the heat of it, all you know is here's another season following this team where things have gone awry. And why does this keep happening here? And so to this fan base, I get it. There's still a lot of good parts here that, and this is one of the things I always go into the seasons with this group with. I don't know how this season's going to go. I do believe over the 10-year period, more often than not, they're going to have good years. And I still believe that. This is a bad year so far. And like this is a tough schedule, and they're not ready for that kind of a schedule, plain and simple. And again, injuries play into that. And then I think there's a talent issue that plays into that, or a coaching issue, whatever you want to say, that all plays into that. But it adds up for you guys as another year so far, 3-4, like, there's still, folks, there's 10 games left. So sometimes in the past, I'd cover some of these teams way back when, and they'd say that. I'm like, that sounds more like a threat than it does a message of hope. But there is, like, for them, like, how do you respond to this? And that's one thing Dan Quinn talked about, like, how are you going to respond? Other players did too. How do you respond to this situation? You got punched in the mouth. Last year, they were punching most of the season. They had a 3-game losing streak, but they had a buffer. They were 7-2 going into that. So they'd already built up a lot of confidence and goodwill in what they could do. And they knew, like, hey, they could play better than that because they showed it for 9 games. They haven't shown it this year. They haven't played a consistent stretch. They've had good games. They've had good halves. The good half against the Chargers. They should have beaten the Bears, but the Bears could have said the same thing had they lost. So, but they haven't had that one game, that stretch, a couple games in a row where it's like, that's the thing. Last year, they could build off that. They haven't built on that this year. They haven't shown that this year to say, like, okay, it'll get better. Last year at 7-5, I still thought it would get better. The finishing schedule was such that it helped them. But this year you don't have that, and you're not playing well. So the question is, why aren't they playing well? And you can leave your answers on YouTube, folks, and I'm sure you got plenty of them. And I'd love to hear it because we all have our theories, and And there's a lot of them. And I think it starts with, to be honest, like, again, you can look at the offense and say, well, listen, they do have injuries. Everything I just said earlier, that is a factor. And they do have them. And when guys are coming back, it can look different. Commanders fans, this is for you. Level up with the brand new AAA Commanders MVP membership. You'll receive all the benefits of AAA, such as 24/7 roadside assistance, plus chances to win game tickets, access to exclusive team events and experiences, along with 15% off Commanders gear at the online pro shop. Already a AAA member? Add the Commanders MVP membership for free. Head to AAA.com/Commanders to upgrade or join the squad and put your fandom in drive. Life can be tough on and off the field. BetterHelp therapists have helped more than 5 million people worldwide on their mental health journeys. Moments in therapy, like learning to relate to your kids, healing relationships, or coping with loss, can change lives. The right therapist makes a tremendous impact, and I know this firsthand. And BetterHelp has more than 12 years experience in matching people to the right therapist. You take a short questionnaire to help find the right match. If you're not happy with the match, you can switch at any time. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, and it works with an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on more than 1.7 million client reviews. BetterHelp is celebrating the therapists who have helped millions of people take a step forward. If you're ready to find the right therapist for you, BetterHelp can help you start that journey. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/Ampire. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Ampire. Where's the hope on defense? That's the question too that you have to ask. Like, where is the hope that there can build, that the defense can kind of dig out of what they put themselves into? Can they do that? 7 games in, this is what they've been. And so, they're not turning the ball over. They're not stopping teams. Is it on them? No, because like today, there were periods where they did well enough to keep them in the game to give the offense a chance, and the offense kept failing. And then when they finally got something going, got a score at the end of the half, think, oh, okay, you get the ball to start the second half, and then they give up 2 monster plays that just completely deflates the whole situation. That's what happens. That's just been that kind of a year. And it's why, again, if you guys are throwing stuff at your TV, if you've broken a TV, well, first of all, I hope you haven't done that. But I kind of understand that. I'm a sports fan too, folks, and I get that. I get that feeling. And, I walk around pissed off half the time when I'm watching Ohio State and they're winning. So I get it. And I feel for you, because this is a year where I didn't think going into the year that they had the roster just yet to face this kind of a schedule where you could automatically say, like, they're there. They had the quarterback, they have other parts, but they didn't have the full roster. And I always felt like it would take another offseason to get them there. And I still believe that. And we'll get more into the offseason at another point. I'm not going there yet at 3 and 4. But so my point is, going in there, I still felt like they had flaws, and I still wondered about the defense. I felt like after training camp, they looked good, but now you know why. And it wasn't because they were good. It's because the offense was struggling. The offense has yet to have a really good rhythm for an extended stretch since the start of camp. And they haven't even been together. The starting offense has not been together one time this entire year since, post playoffs. So like, that's a problem. And, so that's where we're at, folks. But again, I say this all to say, like, I feel for you, because this should have been a much better year. Even if at this point you're 4 and 3, and best maybe 5 and 2, obviously that's pretty good. And like, they're a couple crazy plays in the Bears game from being 4 and 3, and it looks a lot different. But now you're going into Kansas City and then Seattle and then Detroit in a tough spot. And, can you pull out one of these games and get to 4 and 6, and maybe get to Miami and beat them 5 and 6, and then maybe start to turn around as guys get back healthy? And maybe you don't play offenses that are quite as explosive as what you're playing right now. I don't know. Like, that's where you're going to have to cling to that, because that's about where we're at with this stuff. Then I think, man, I don't know that I don't know that I don't think I have the answer. I want to read my notes here too, what I really want to talk about. And, sometimes, like, I don't know. It's hard too, because when I know people are saying like Joe Witt, fire Joe Witt. Well, it's hard to say that and just do that. First of all, they're not going to do that during the season. So, and I'm not going to sit there and call for it. That's not my job to do that. But, and you can go do whatever you want. But the hard part is that people say that and then they rip on the personnel. So what is it? Is it if it's the personnel or is it all of it? I tend to think usually in these situations, there's a contributing factor with all sorts of things. And, I think then it's also with personnel, you got Marshawn Lattimore, who did not have a good game. And these are the games that he played well the last 2 weeks. This tonight doesn't change that. He still played well the last 2 weeks. Did not have that game tonight. And this is the game where they needed him. Missed tackle on the first drive, gives up a third down catch on that first drive. Gives up. In fact, it was after the missed tackle. So, and again, instead of third and long, and now 3rd and 1 with the slant, boom, easy pickings. Then you give up the pass interference. And, that's the first drive. And then you give up another pass interference later in the game, but also that 44-yard pass to George Pickens before the end of the half. And this is a couple twofold. Now, was he in a good spot? Yes, he was. It was a hell of a throw by Dak Prescott. A good catch, but a hell of a throw. And he was right there, but right there still resulted in a 44-yard catch. So, and I know a lot of guys like want to turn and look at the ball. Some corners do not feel comfortable doing that because you turn and then you lose sight of things when you're turning like that. It's not always best. That's why they teach you to come up through the hands and all that. So just turning it's not something that every corner does or wants to do. It's not something that a lot of corner coaches will teach because for that reason. But my problem on that play goes back to the start of the play. So you have Amos, who's on the other side, looks like he's in a cover 4. You have safeties. Looks like either half or quarters coverage, but then Lattimore's up on Pickens. It's 2nd and 17. I know everybody keeps saying like, they got to play up again. Why are you I don't get why they're playing up on that one. Like there's not much time left in the half. It's 2nd and 17. They're inside their own 30. Why are you basically gave them that shot. You gave them an opportunity for that shot. And it looked like, because Lattimore was up and it looks like man at first, then he drops where it looks like zone, but it's like, that's the only guy on that side. So you're going to turn and run with them. But I don't understand why you were up that close. And I don't know if that was on Lattimore or if it's on call because others were off. But that to me is where it started. Like when you have a guy, you have Pickens in essentially, whether it's zone or man, it's a one-on-one situation. If you get him in that, what are you going to do? You're going to take a shot. Why are you doing that? That's what I don't get. And like, maybe there's a good explanation for it. I don't have one. I'll talk to corners and say like, what was he doing there? Like, or why was it like that? And, that's something I would like to know because it hurt them. And that was a spot where it's like, if you make the stop there, like, I don't know that they win this game, like the way they came about, but there has to be dispiriting when you keep giving up those long passes, those big plays at times where you have them in a great situation. It's 2nd and 17, and then you give that up. So it's got to be, I know these guys are frustrated as hell. Like, talk to Jeremy Reeves, the guys in the secondary, like that's their job, and they keep giving them up, and it's always a different reason. And sometimes it's one time Lattimore coming over on the deep one, I think it was to Lamb. You have a 74-yard one where it looks like he thinks he might pick the ball off. Instead, he picks off Quan Martin, who's chasing on, he's a zone on the play, coming over the deep half safety, and they just collide and boom, easy touchdown. So one play, 74 yards, that stuff, that's not a miscommunication. It's just try to make a play and you failed and you knock your guy out. Weird. But it's, in other words, like different reasons are why these things keep happening. And then, so after the 45-yard play, then the next play, Javonte Williams runs for 33 yards. Now, part of that goes back to, all right, it's a hustle down to the ball, right? They got to hustle down the ball. Well, I'm watching Javon Kinlaw, and on the snap, they clearly are playing for a pass. So they caught him off guard with the run, but on the play, like Kinlaw looked gassed and just basically stood up. So he gets blocked. There's a double team that was going to be on him, but because there's not much resistance, double team peels off, gets to Jeremy Reeves, blocks him. Savage is coming down. Reeves gets blocked into the hole where Savage is going to go. So there's no one in the gap. And it leads to an easy 33-yard run down to the 2-yard line. That was as bad a drive that I've seen in a long, long time, given the situation what they just did. They fought they got back in the game. They get the ball to start the second half. And my goodness, like to me, that was the game right there. That drive right there that just said like they can't stop. They're not going to ever stop them. And I just think it was giving back that momentum at that time was a killer. And that's like I said, that has to be one of the worst defensive series I've seen because of the situation for sure. So not very good, folks. Um, man, and like I said, with personnel, I know they want to play, they wanted to play a lot of press man this year. And that's with Lattimore, with Amos. I think Amos is doing a nice job by and large for a rookie year. I think he's doing about what I expected. Lattimore, again, these are the games they got him for. And he's not in those games. Like there are a lot of times he's close, but he's getting penalties in those games and getting beat. So like this is where these are the games you have to measure him by, and it's just not there. So they're having to play more zone than they want, but still big plays are still happening. And again, when you're playing a zone and then you're giving up that 44-yarder, like it's like you kind of start banging your head on the wall. And I know you guys have to be doing the same because it is what it is, folks. Commanders fans, this is for you. Level up with the brand new AAA Commanders MVP membership. You'll receive all the benefits of AAA, such as 24/7 roadside assistance, plus chances to win game tickets, access to exclusive team events and experiences, along with 15% off Commanders gear at the online pro shop. Already a AAA member? Add the Commanders MVP membership for free. Head to AAA.com/Commanders to upgrade or join the squad and put your fandom in drive. One of the things, too, I will say, like, there's a lot of talk about how to get out of this. And one thing that, I'm talking about injuries, they're not blaming anything on that. There have been staffs that I've covered in the past who would 1,000% blame things on injuries. And I go back like many, many years, right? From the beginning, first coach I covered, Norv Turner, I guarantee that would be one of the things he'd be talking on Monday privately with one of the other reporters, because that's what happened. But that's not how this group operates. I like that. I like that they're not going to do that, because like you can't get out of this if you're sitting there blaming something else. I do wonder, can they get out of this? And how are they going to get out of this? If Daniels has to miss time, will McLaurin or Debo be back next week? And will it be enough regardless against Kansas City, because that offense is getting healthy, and then they're going to face a defense that is giving up big plays. So it's just the matchups are bad right now for them for where they're at. But you can still play better, and they're getting a lot of penalties, and that's another thing. So, but I think, that's, I don't know. And even defensively, like they get a safety. They forced 3 punts, believe it or not. The offense just couldn't take more advantage. And I think that's probably the problem. Again, I'm not ready for the offseason talk yet. There's still enough time to go. Like I always say, weird things happen. Like they could, whether, if you don't go to Kansas City and win, maybe you come back and you beat Seattle and now you're, 4-5, whatever. So they're not in a good spot. We know them, and they have to play better. Oh man. I just think it's going to be tough, but it's also tough when you like second series of the game, Zach Ertz drops a ball it would have made it it was a 2nd and 6, drops a ball. So instead of 3rd and 6, or instead of 3rd and 1, you would have had it. You would have probably gotten tackled about 1 yard shy, but instead of 3rd and 1, it's now 3rd and 6. They end up punting. So, they had Jalen Lane drops a ball that would have given them like, I think probably about 15, 20-yard game. Jaden Daniels missed some throws. Now, whether is that he missed some throws. The worst one was there was one to Zach Ertz where it's a 2nd and 9, would have given the ball a first down at the Dallas 40, and Zach Ertz is open, and it's a zone coverage, just airmailed it. That's not something he did last year, and it was an open shot. He had time, and it just these are weird things that are happening to them, and it becomes hard to explain after a while, but that's what is happening, and it's happening too much. You have there's the third down, the first third down they have. This is where the difference in players makes too. Like third down, you try to get McCaffrey on a crosser, but there's no separation. It's a man, and Dallas played more man coverage. So this is the other thing too. Chicago, a lot of heavy boxes. Dallas, a lot of heavy boxes. Dallas, going into the game, had played more zone and less man than any team in the NFL. Do you know what it was tonight? 47.5% of the time they were in man coverage. Now, they probably are better in that defense. So I don't know what Matt Eberflus had been doing before that. He's just, putting that zone on them. But you look at this team and this roster right now. So there's the impact of the injuries. They're playing man because they know that they're not threatened by you. And 47.5% of the time when they played man, Washington's quarterbacks were 5 for 15 for 57 yards. In zone, 11 for 17 for 162 yards. Here's the other impact in the run game. 9 of the 13 runs that Krosky Merritt had, he faced a 7-man box or more. So the key is getting those light boxes against Dallas. Now, even tonight, it didn't matter. Like there were 4 light boxes. He gained 4 yards. By light box, I mean six guys in the box. 4 yards on 4 carries. Not good. That's what they had struggled with going into the game. But that man coverage allows you to do that. Now, it opened up some lanes for Jaden Daniels to run, but they didn't get hurt. They gave up first downs, but they didn't get stung by it. And so that was an issue. But that's what the man coverage. That's why you need these receivers back. So to kind of get the defense to back off a little bit and create some better boxes for Krosky Merritt or whomever is running the ball. So that was a definite problem too. Again, penalties on offense, that was an issue. Connolly gets called for some. So there are some things that just need to be cleaned up. Cosme, first game back, I can't sit there and say how well he did or how didn't. I did see one block he missed, but that's one block. He played every snap. First game back, I don't have great read on that. What I do know is a lot of mistakes happened and it just wasn't a good thing. And this team keeps digging itself a hole on the road at home. They keep falling behind in all these games. To be honest, Dallas clearly wanted the toss. They won the toss and they took the ball. Most teams defer. If I were Washington, I'd start taking it as well. Tonight, I would have taken it for sure because you just got to find a way to get ahead and quit because it didn't help them today because the defense gave up points at the end. Almost did, but it didn't. But Dallas automatically wanted that ball because they knew chance to get points, and they did, and they put them in a hole right away. The safety and then the subsequent touchdown definitely helped, and it got them out of there. But then it's once you get back in that thing, it's really hard to go. So I do like that they are recognizing that talk is cheap. And it is because at some point, things are going to start falling on deaf ears because you can talk about this isn't who we are. We're better than this. Well, if you're not playing better than this is who you are. So you have to go out there and play better than this. And I think, Dan Quinn had a very steeled look on his face after the game. We'll see what it means this week. We'll see is there anything different? What do they do anything different? Does it result in a sharper focus? And will that matter? Will that be enough? Because they may have that, but it may not be enough. And I think that's the part that I think that will be hard for them to grapple with. So anyway, folks, I'm again at the point where I'm rambling and you know how you feel and I don't have to tell you anything and you know what's going on here, but I don't think the solution is just to, I brought up Lattimore, they're not going to bench him because he's still one of their best corners. And, until you have somebody better, that's the way it is. And they're not changing. They're not firing people. They're not doing any of that. So you've got to figure out what you can do within what you have. But, we'll see. We'll find out more throughout the week and see what happens going to Kansas City and see what they can do for the rest of the year. So appreciate you tuning in again, 7:30 Eastern time with the voice of the Commanders, Brian Weinstein and I, and I'll have my second thoughts on Tuesday morning. Appreciate you tuning in. Hang in there, folks. Talk to you next time.